Right. Anyway, good afternoon. Um, okay. So to finish this prototype 2, for unit 2, we'll be adding collision detection as well as we'll clean up some parts of our code. So similar prototype here, but we can move our farmer or our player left to right. That's clamped siya, right? And we can fire projectiles, which is, well, pieces of meat. But now it has collision detection, in which if the projectile collides with an animal, uh, it disappears, right? As well as disappearment ng projectile. Okay? Something like this. So we'll just do collision detection for these ones. Okay? So I'll close this and we'll go back to previous states in lecture. Move on screen. So I'll close this and we'll go sa previous state sa lecture. So previous state where we left off sa lecture 1 was this, where well, bananas siya in this case, right? But we can fire our projectiles, but we don't have collision detection yet. Okay, so that's what we're going to do this lecture. Will provide collision detection as well as game object destruction upon collision. Okay, anyway, see. So, going back on our prefabs that we did earlier, our last lecture, it's under here, custom prefabs. So, if we want to edit our prefabs, no, we can put it here sa scene view and then edit here and then sync the prefab from the scene view to the prefabs folder. Pero what we could also do is double click on this prefabs, tapos you will see sa scene view, we're editing just the prefab without looking at the things in the scene. So I'm currently in isometric, this isometric. This is perspective view, isometric. So usually when I put up colliders, especially boxy colliders, I use the isometric view para flat-ish siya, and it is not warped with perspective. So for example, like this, when we're in perspective mode, of course, if it's nearer, it looks bigger. So when setting up colliders, it's not very accurate. So I'd like to go on isometric view and then we can add colliders here. So I'll add a component. So since we'll keep this thing simple, instead of a mesh collider, we'll actually use a box collider for now. So there are two here, box collider and box collider 2D. Well, the difference is one is for 3D, one is for 2D. Since we're using a 3D environment, we'll do the box collider without the 3D. And then if you look at the screen, I'm not sure, it's hard to see it, but the collider is that. There is the collider here. So it doesn't really represent the collider for our cow. So what we do here is we will edit the collider. Okay? So in the inspector, you could actually see here my edit collider, and then there is this button, edit bounding value. Okay, so we can click on this, right? So that edits the collider, and then you'll see sa collider mismo there are dots. So dots nga you can move this, right? Expand this however you like, right? And you can also manipulate the size of the collider here sa center and size, right? So currently we can make this like one by one by one, a cube, right? So we can edit this x value as well. You click on x and then drag it left to right to expand it. What I want to do, or what I always do with this colliders, is I go at a certain view, for example top view, so I can measure um, the size of or the width of the collider that I need. So in this case, I can adjust it like this, right? Where I want to keep it even. So instead of that, I could click on one point here, and then I'll hold the Alt button or the Alt key. Tapos pwede mo siya expand both ways. So usually, so you could adjust it maybe somehow like this. That's the width of the cow. We'll do that same thing for the height or the width, I guess. No, this is the width. Length of the cow. So maybe around like this. That's good enough collider. And then for the height of the cow, maybe we could do this view and then just click on that. Okay, so that you can further refine this, maybe make it thinner around this parts and then make it rise around this part. Now, if you're happy with the collider, you can see that it's just a box collider within our cow, right? So we don't have anything yet. Currently, this is just a collider. We don't have detections yet, and we didn't really set up any rigid bodies for collision. So currently, we don't have anything else. This is just to set up the colliders for detection later. We can do this for our other animals, say for our dog. So I'll double click on the dog and then I'll set up a collider for this as well. Also box collider. In fact, actually, I'll just click on my prefabs here. So this banana, dog, and then stag. And then I'll just add a component for all three of them. Box collider lang siya for now to keep things simple. And then you can edit them separately, right? So I'll edit this dog. Where is your box collider? There, box collider. Oops. Okay, let's edit the banana for now. The dog doesn't want to. So for this one, I think it's already encompassing most of our mesh here. So doon naka-fit naman siya. We don't really have to edit this, right? It's already form-fitting, kumbaga. Let's take a look at our stag. So for our stag, the collider looks like that, very big. So we could reduce this, right? Make it a little smaller. And then this one here around that. And then height, the width. Okay, that's there. If you're happy with the collider, you could just like click elsewhere, or you could just click tick off the edit collider here, right? If you're done editing, you could click this off, or you could click off anywhere para okay na siya. Let's take a look at our dog. It's here. Um, edit collider. Okay, there. So I'm editing the collider for the dog as well. Very big. Okay. And then front view. There. I guess that's everything, right? Okay. So currently, all of these are colliders, right? But there is another property here. There's a checkbox here. Is trigger. So ang is trigger, if this is unchecked, then the collider acts as an actual collider in which mag-collide siya, right? And if there is a rigid body, there is actual collision. It should not be able to go through. Well, sometimes depende sa code or depende sa physics, sometimes does, but mostly or usually if it's a collider, not a trigger, it doesn't go through. However, if you check this, is trigger, it becomes a trigger. Think of a trigger as like an area in which you can pass through, but if you pass through an area with a trigger, ma-detect siya na you stepped into that area, right? So sort of like a force field or something. When you go to that area, you are entering a trigger. So for simplicity here, I'll just put it as a trigger para wala kita. We don't really detect collisions. We're just detecting trigger enter here. We could actually do collisions as well, pero I think trigger here is easier for now. I'll make everything as a trigger and then we'll sort out some collisions later. Okay, so if we click on play for now, everything has colliders, pero trigger siya. Okay, I'll just demonstrate what happens if it's a trigger and what happens if it's an actual collider. Okay, so trigger, it just goes through, right? And there is no, well, we haven't coded the behavior for collisions yet, so nothing happens. But if we make it instead of a trigger, if it is a collider, then we'll see what happens. Oh, there is no rigid body as well, so it doesn't go through. So for the rigid body, again for collisions, at least one of the parties involved sa collision should have a rigid body in order for the collision to be detected. Now for this example, we could put rigid bodies on all of our prefabs, but the one that we're interested in colliding with is ang projectile and the animal lang. And it's usually the projectile doing the collision onto the animal. So we could just create a rigid body for our projectile. So we could add a component here, rigid body. Don't click on 2D, just the rigid body. Okay. And then I'll take off use gravity here so it's not affected by gravity. What happens if we have gravity on is, well, it sinks to the bottom, right? You can see it here. There. So if I click, it sinks to the bottom like that. So we don't want gravity for this one, so we'll just tick off where is it? Use gravity. Then we'll check if there is actual collision. What happens? So it collides, pero it just disappears, right? It collides, it disappears. That's because, well, it is collider, not a trigger, actually. Okay. So for now, um, we'll do triggers, no, for now, for simplicity. And then we'll lain ang code for trigger enter, lain mo ang code for collision enter. So for now, we'll just do triggers, so it's simpler. Okay, so I'll put everything here as triggers, and then we'll create a script for collision detection. So let's go to scripts here. I'll create another script here. I'll say this will be, I'll attach this to the projectile since ang projectile man ang usually na collide, right? Projectile collision. Collision. How do you spell that? Collision. Okay. And then I'll attach this to our, I'll open this and then, okay, sige. So for this script, we don't really need start, we don't really need update. The method we need here is void on collision enter. So there are a lot of collision detection methods. One here is just on collision enter. There are also on collisions that not on collision. We are using trigger. Sorry, on trigger enter. So there are other methods such as on trigger stay, on trigger leave, right? When one rigid body leaves another trigger, so pwede mo naman siya ma-detect. For collision, same thing. On collision enter when the collision happens. On collision stay is if gadikit sila, right? For a certain amount, and then that is on collision stay. For on collision exit or leave, on collision leave is when the collision mag-leave na siya sa collision. In this case, we're just using on trigger enter. When the collision happens between two objects, we will encode the behavior. Okay. The parameter for this is collider. Collider there. So collider is sort of the superclass for all colliders. So it's just for triggers. No, it accepts kung ano ang nag-collide sa iya, which is the collider. For this case, what we have previously was if mag-collide, it just destroys each other. Mutual destruction lang, ma-destroy si projectile, ma-destroy man ang object which it collided with. Right? So, we'll do destroy. We'll destroy first ang game object that it collided with before it destroys itself. So I'll destroy collider. So this is the thing that it collided with, dot game object. We are destroying that game object, right? Which the collider and na attached say was, yeah. And then we'll destroy itself. We'll just say destroy game object. Okay. And then we'll attach this sa prefabs. Where is the custom prefabs? We'll attach this a banana, right? Projectile. Did I collision? Hmm? Okay. Or prefabs. It doesn't. Yeah, a drag and drop ko na lang. The problem here is, man, sige, scripts, and then I'll drag it here. Projectile collision. Cannot add script because script class cannot be found. Make sure that there are no compile errors. Ooh, is it a problem with? Cannot add script, projectile collision because the script class cannot be found. Make sure that. May wrong ano ba ako? Projectile collision. Yeah. Compile error. Hmm. Let's rename this. Let's just create another script. I'll say this is food collision. Compile errors ba? Wala man siya nagambal, may compile errors. I don't understand. On trigger enter. Food collision. Wait lang. Check my notes. Isa lang ako. On trigger enter. What naman? On trigger enter. Dapat ano siya? Ito man. Ito man. Ito man dapat. Anyway, let's see. Collision. Oh, that's not what it should do. Here. Ayun na siya. Food collision. Okay. So it should work. Okay. Sorry na siya sa script. Na-add ko na siya. Okay, finally. Oh, sorry. Maybe something wrong with the class name. So projectile collision. There. Okay na siya. Right? So when it collides, or when it enters the trigger, technically, it gets destroyed. Okay. Going back sa prefabs, no? It's here sa banana, and then ara siya here, food collision. Um, and then the code looks like this. Okay, one more thing sa collision is we have this thing called tags. So if you look at sa inspector, may here, tag on tag. What we use tags usually for collision to identify if we are going to collide or we are going to do something with this object that we collided with. So for example, I want to specify, in this case, it doesn't make much difference, but I want to specify na if it collides with an animal, for example, then it will destroy. If it doesn't collide with an animal, then it doesn't get destroyed. So we could do that with tags. So I'll select all the animals that we want here, so all the three animals, and then I'll add a tag. So we have already preset the tags like respawn, finish, editor only, main camera, etc., player, game controller. If you want to add more tags, you could just add tag here and then click on the plus here sa tags, right? So these are essentially custom tags. So I'll add one more tag here, an animal tag. I'll click on save. Then I'll go back to our prefabs and then click tag here. So our siyang animal here. So I'll tag all of these animal for now, right? And then sa collision detection, we could have an if statement here. So if we could say collider. So if the collider that we bumped with or the trigger that we bumped with, the dot compare tag. So if the tag is not equal to 0, if the tag is animal, then we destroy, right? So, but if it's not an animal, we don't destroy, for example. Okay. So, going back, so the script looks like that, right? So if the tag of the collider that we bump with is an animal, string siya, no? So be careful. Then it will destroy. If it is not an animal, say ang cow, just for this purposes, will not tag this as an animal. So let's see what happens if ang gani siyang code ta, right? For the cow, it was not tagged as an animal. So when we shoot at the cow, wala siya kaka-destroy, right? So this tags is one nifty way to sort of pick and choose which collision you will be processing, which triggers you will be putting a behavior with, right? So si cow wala siya kaka-destroy, it doesn't get destroyed because well it's not tagged as an animal. If I tag this as an animal now sa game mode, may newly spawned cow. Okay. There, pwede na siya mapatay, right? So yeah, so we could check. No? These are all animals now. There. Okay. So that's just tagging for collision detection later on. So if you have multiple collision later on, you could pick and choose what happens if it collides with this, what happens if it collides with that. So tag is sort of like the general category siya. Okay? So essentially, this game or this prototype, we've done what we wanted here, but I just want to make a little more clean up sa code, especially sa where was it? Where was it? Sa spawner, okay, animal spawner. Okay, so for our animal spawner currently, we have this update where we are keeping track of the time, and then if it reaches the spawn time, spawn siya, and then it will reset the elapsed time here, essentially. We can clean this code up with other things such as coroutines, etc. But the one we will use today is invoke, a function called invoke. Yes, invoke or invoke repeating actually, which the one we'll use here. Okay, so if you remember, no, sa other programming languages, when you do a method call, you're actually doing a method invocation. So invoke here just means that you will call a method. Okay, this one, ang spawning of the animal will actually make it as a another method. So I'll do private void. So we'll use this later sa invocation. I'll say spawn animal. By the way, for C#, ang iyan the naming convention is Pascal case, meaning for methods, capital ang first letter. It's different with Java, where Java it's small letter first, right? But anyway, we'll get this part where it spawns the animal, right? And then we'll just cut and paste it here, the spawn animal, fix up the indentations a bit. So this is now, well, we could call this here, and it will act the same way, right? But what I want to do here is actually use invoke, and we won't do its update. We'll actually do this start. I'll explain later on why public. So void start. Okay, we'll do the invocation here. So we have two variations of this. We have one that is just invoke, and we have one that is invoke repeating. Repeating. Okay. Let's do the invoke first. So this invoke has two parameters. The first one is the method name, right? Or the function name. This is in string format. Then this is the time to invoke, right? Time delay to invoke. So essentially, you have a method name that you will supply here sa invoke, and then time delay is, well, the amount of time that it will start invoking the function, right? So if we say, sige, let's comment out this update. If we say spawn animal here, and then time delay is, let's say, spawn rate, okay? So what this does is it will invoke or call the method spawn animal after 1 second from this method call, right? So since it is sa start siya, right? So when the game starts, or well, the animal spawner is already in the game, right? So when the game starts, it will invoke spawn animal after 1 second. Okay, so let's check that out. Now this one, it will, oops, animal spawner elapsed time is sent. It's fine. It's just a warning. Anyway, okay. So for this case, once lang siya mag-call. Okay? So that's just for invoke. Invoke is just a one-time call. After 1 second of game start, right? Well, since it's just a start. All right? So play 1 second, and then may invoke siya, right? What we want here actually is not just one-time call. We want here is invoke repeating. So for invoke repeating, similar with invoke, it has parameter. The first parameter is the method name that we want, or the function name that we want to invoke. The second one, so float time here, this is the amount of time before it starts the invocation, right? So similar to previous one, before it calls the function. So say, let's say spawn rate here, and then the next parameter is the repeat rate. So every how much time siya mag-repeat. So in this case, I want it to repeat every 1 second, so I'll just put spawn rate here as well. Okay? So to explain this code, sa start, when the game starts, it will invoke spawn animal after 1 second. After that, it will keep repeating or keep calling that function after every second siya. So instead of keeping track of the time here, I'll just delete this now because we don't really need this anymore. Okay? Instead of doing that, and then with elapsed time here as well, we'll just do invoke repeating sa start. Okay? So hindi lang man siya, this code, this invoke repeating is not only sa start. Pwede mo man na siya ibutang in other functions. Say some event happens, then I'll do invoke after that, or I'll do invoke repeating after that. Okay? Just note that the invocation will start after this line is executed. Okay? Or depending how much time after it executed. So there, cow, dog. So ma-repeat na siya invoke every 1 second. Okay? There. The code is much more cleaner. We could also do this with coroutines, pero coroutines we'll just discuss its unit 3 na lang. Okay. We could also do this. The other one that we could do this with is destroy, right? So time destruction. So we could do destroy game object like this, or we could rewrite this. Well, this is the simplest method, right? But if you want to do the invoke route, right, you could do void or private void like destroy this. Okay, and then you could just say destroy game object, something like this, and then instead of this, again, ang destroy with time to live is the best, but if you want to go the invoke route, pwede man siya here. So we could invoke, destroy this, after time to live. So it's gonna do the same thing. It's just this is the better way, right? You could also do this with invoke. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so for now, our prototype here is done. You could add more things here, be creative with it. For example, you could add a trigger sa likod here. You could create an empty here, create empty object, and then reset transform, and then make it like you could station it here, and then you could add a box collider, then edit the collider like so. Like if you have like you can do something like this where there is a collider at the end. And then if an animal collides with this game object, say southbound, then you'll I don't know, game over siya or something you'll print something sa console, etc. Actually, let's do that, no? Just for uh south boundary. Okay. So edit this. Uh, this one is on avoid on trigger enter collider. So we could do collider dot compare tag animal. Then you could I don't know. I'll just print something here. Debug dot log. So this is for the console log. No, animal escape. Something like this. And then since our animals don't have rigid bodies, so hindi na siya ma-detect ang collision, I'll just put a rigid body here sa so I'll mark this as a trigger and I'll add a rigid body just for collision, no gravity. So we'll look at the console, what happens when an animal passes through that. When an animal passes through there, animal escape, etc. So yeah, you could experiment with this, have fun with triggers, object creation, etc. Yeah, be creative about it. But for Unit 2, this is the end for Unit 2. I'll be releasing MP2 later tomorrow.